"Step out of the car, ma'am. Now." Officer Tyler Grant's voice cut through the wet evening air before Naomi Brooks could even ask why the blue lights had followed her for nearly half a mile. It was 7:18 p.m. on Route 17, just outside downtown Atlanta, and rainwater still clung to the asphalt in thin silver sheets. Naomi sat behind the wheel of her old gray Toyota, both hands placed where he could see them, her hospital badge hanging from the rearview mirror, her trauma kit strapped on the passenger seat, and her phone glowing with the words Mercy General Emergency Department. She had been driving toward the hospital, not away from trouble. But trouble had found her anyway. Officer Grant stood beside her window with one hand near his belt and the other resting against the door frame, his face half lit by the flashing red and blue lights. Behind him, Officer Daniel Pierce waited near the patrol car, younger, quieter, watching the stop unfold with an uneasy stillness. Naomi lowered the window slowly. "Officer, I am on my way to Mercy General for an emergency call. Can you tell me why I was stopped?" Grant's eyes moved from her face to the kit on the seat, then to the worn steering wheel, then back to her skin. "License and registration." Naomi nodded carefully. "My license is in my wallet, front pocket of my purse. I am going to reach for it slowly." She had said those words before, not because she was guilty, but because black women in America often had to narrate their own innocence out loud. If this story already has your heart racing, subscribe now, because what happens next is not just about a traffic stop, it is about the moment power meets the truth it was not ready to face. Naomi reached into her purse with 2 fingers and pulled out her license. Grant took it without thanking her. The rain tapped softly on the roof of the car. In the distance, an ambulance siren cried somewhere beyond the tree line, thin and urgent. Naomi looked toward the sound, and something tightened in her chest. Mercy General did not call her on her night off unless the emergency room was about to overflow. Earlier that evening, she had been at New Hope Baptist Church, helping with a free clinic in the basement, checking blood pressure, changing bandages, handing out bottled water to seniors who could not afford urgent care. She had just loaded the leftover medical supplies into her car when the hospital called. School bus crash reported on Route 17. Multiple children incoming. Need trauma lead now. Naomi had not hesitated. She had zipped her medical bag, hugged the pastor's wife, and driven into the rain with one thought in her mind: get there before the first child arrived. Now she sat under police lights while every second stretched like a held breath. Grant looked at her license, then at the dashboard camera clipped near her windshield. "Why are you recording?" Naomi kept her voice calm. "For everyone's safety." His expression hardened. "That sounds like you were expecting a problem." "No, sir," Naomi said. "It means I have learned to be careful." Officer Pierce shifted near the patrol car, glancing toward the glowing phone on Naomi's console as it buzzed again. "Mercy General." Then again. "Mercy General." Grant leaned closer to the window. "What is in the bag?" "Medical supplies. I am a trauma nurse." "Anyone can say that." Naomi swallowed the frustration rising in her throat. She could feel the old familiar pressure of being doubted before being heard. "My badge is hanging right there. My hospital identification is in the front pocket of the kit. You can verify it." Grant did not look. He stepped back and pointed toward the road shoulder. "Out of the car." The words landed colder than the rain. Naomi glanced at the phone as another message lit the screen. "Pediatric trauma incoming. Need Nurse Brooks immediately." Her fingers tightened around the wheel, but her face stayed composed. "Officer, I will cooperate," she said slowly, clearly, "but I need you to understand that delaying me may put someone else at risk." Grant's jaw set. "The only thing at risk right now is what happens if you do not follow instructions." Naomi looked past him, toward the dark line of Route 17 where sirens were multiplying in the distance. She did not know yet whose child was waiting at the hospital. She did not know that one name on the casualty list would turn this entire night upside down. All she knew was that people were hurt, she was needed, and the men blocking her path had already decided. Her calm sounded like defiance. Naomi opened the driver's door slowly, keeping one hand visible and the other resting lightly on the frame. The wet shoulder of Route 17 reflected the patrol lights beneath her shoes, red and blue sliding across the puddles like warning signs that would not hold still. She stepped out in navy scrubs under a dark medical jacket, the Mercy General badge swinging against her chest, her hair pulled back in a tight bun, her eyes tired but clear. She was 34 years old enough to know how quickly a calm voice could be misread, young enough to still believe that saying the truth carefully should matter. Officer Grant took 2 steps back, giving himself space he did not need, and Naomi noticed it. She noticed everything. That was what made her good in trauma. The slight bluish tint around a patient's lips. The delayed blink before shock set in. The way a mother's silence could mean more fear than screaming. At Mercy General, doctors trusted Naomi because she saw what others missed. She had worked 12-hour shifts that became 16, held hands through bad news, talked frightened children into breathing slowly, and once caught an internal bleed because a teenager kept rubbing his left shoulder while insisting he felt fine. She was not the loudest nurse in the emergency department, but when Naomi Brooks spoke, people listened. Most people. Grant circled toward the passenger side of her car and looked through the window at the trauma kit. "Open the bag," he said. Naomi kept her hands at her sides. "Officer, that kit contains sterile medical supplies. Gloves, gauze, trauma shears, tourniquets for training, airway masks, and pediatric wraps. I can open it, but I would prefer you let me show my hospital identification first." Grant glanced at her badge, but not long enough to read it. "I told you to open the bag." Behind him, Officer Pierce shifted closer, his eyes flicking to Naomi's phone as it buzzed again against the console. The screen lit up with another message from Mercy General. Naomi could see the first line from where she stood. School bus crash. Multiple children incoming. She swallowed once, steadying herself. The words pulled her back 5 years, to a different night, a different road, a different emergency that had arrived too late. Her little brother, Caleb, had been 22, driving home from a late shift at a warehouse outside Macon when a truck lost control in heavy rain. The ambulance had been delayed by traffic, confusion, and a dispatch error. By the time Naomi reached the hospital, a nurse she did not know had met her in the hallway with that careful face medical workers use when the truth is already written. After Caleb died, Naomi stopped believing time was abstract. A minute had weight. 5 minutes had a cost. 10 minutes could divide a family into before and after forever. That was why she never ignored a call from Mercy General. That was why she volunteered at church clinics. That was why the trauma kit sat on her passenger seat like a second heartbeat. Grant did not know any of that. To him, the bag looked suspicious because he had already decided the woman beside it was suspicious. "Do you have anything illegal in the vehicle?" he asked. Naomi looked at him, rain dotting her cheeks. "No, then you should not be nervous." "I am not nervous because I am hiding something," she said. "I am nervous because you are not listening." Pierce looked up at that, and for one brief second Naomi saw something human cross his face. Recognition, maybe. Doubt. Grant's expression hardened. "You are making this harder than it needs to be." Naomi almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. She had spent her life making hard things easier for other people, pressing calm into rooms full of panic, explaining pain scales to children, telling grandmothers where to wait, telling fathers to sit down before their knees gave out. Now she was standing on the side of a highway, being treated like patience was guilt. "My hospital badge is real," she said. "My supervisor can verify it. My phone has 6 missed calls from the emergency department. There are children on the way to Mercy General who may need me." Grant looked toward the phone at last. But his face did not soften. He saw the evidence, and still chose suspicion. People fake emergencies all the time. Naomi's hands curled once, then relaxed. The rain fell harder for a moment, tapping on the hood of her car, on the plastic casing of the patrol lights, on the road between them. Somewhere far ahead, sirens rose again, layered now, more than one vehicle, more than one life being rushed through the dark. Naomi turned her head toward the sound, and her voice dropped. "I hope, for all our sakes, you are right to waste this time." Officer Tyler Grant had been on the force for 17 years, long enough to know every curve of Route 17 and long enough to believe that experience made him right before the facts arrived. He was 42, broad-shouldered, clean-shaven, with a face that looked carved by long shifts and bad coffee. Other officers called him efficient because he wrote reports fast, cleared calls quickly, and never seemed unsure when he stepped out of a patrol car. But in the neighborhoods south of downtown, people spoke his name differently. They spoke it in lowered voices at gas stations, in barbershops, outside laundromats where mothers warned their sons to keep both hands visible if Grant pulled behind them. No one said he was the worst man in the department. That would have made the story too simple. The harder truth was that Grant believed he was fair. He believed he could read danger in posture, guilt in hesitation, disrespect in questions. He believed people who asked for reasons were testing authority, and people who recorded police were preparing trouble. That belief had followed him into the rain and wrapped itself around Naomi before she had finished her first sentence. Officer Daniel Pierce knew the reputation too, though he rarely said it out loud. Pierce was 29, still young enough to remember academy lectures about de-escalation, constitutional stops, and community trust as something more than words on a PowerPoint slide. He had joined the department because his father had been a firefighter and his mother had taught 4th grade, and service had sounded like a clean word in his house. But the street had taught him another lesson: silence was easier than challenging a senior officer in the middle of a stop. So Pierce stood near the patrol car, rain darkening the shoulders of his uniform, watching Grant hold Naomi in place while her phone kept lighting up like a warning flare. Grant handed Naomi's license back to Pierce without looking away from her. "Run it again." Pierce glanced at the screen inside the patrol car. "Already clear." "Run the plate again too." "The plate is clear." Grant turned his head slightly. "I said again." Pierce did it. The computer returned the same answer, white letters against a blue-gray screen. "Valid registration. No warrants. No stolen vehicle alert. No match to the earlier report except color and general model, and even that was thin." The vehicle in the call had been a black sedan with temporary tags. Naomi's car was gray, registered, with a hospital parking decal on the rear window. Pierce looked from the screen to Naomi's car, then toward Grant. "Sir," he said quietly, "this does not look like the reported vehicle." Grant's eyes stayed on Naomi as she stood beside the driver's door, rain beating on her medical jacket, her hands open and visible. "People switch plates," he said. Pierce knew that was possible. He also knew it was not a reason by itself. Naomi heard enough to understand the shape of what was happening. The goalposts were moving. First it was her license. Then the bag. Then the camera. Then the car. Each answer she gave only created another suspicion. She had seen patients like that too, people so committed to the first diagnosis that they ignored the test results in front of them. Grant stepped toward the passenger door. "I am going to inspect the bag." Naomi took one small step forward, not blocking him, only trying to keep the situation anchored to reason. "Officer, my hospital identification is in the front pocket. Please verify that before touching sterile supplies." Grant looked at her then, fully, and the look was not loud, but it was heavy. "You do not tell me how to do my job." Naomi breathed through her nose, slow and controlled. "I am asking you to let me do mine." That sentence changed his face. "Not much. Just enough." His pride heard insult where her fear had asked for urgency. Pierce saw it and felt the moment tilt. The rain softened, then thinned to mist. Across the highway, a white pickup slowed as it passed, the driver staring. A woman at a bus stop lifted her phone and began recording from beneath a plastic poncho. Naomi noticed the camera, and so did Grant. The public eye made him colder, not calmer. "Stand over there," he said, pointing to the space between her bumper and the patrol car. Naomi obeyed, walking carefully across the slick pavement. Her phone buzzed again inside the car, a bright pulse in the dark interior. Pierce looked through the window and read the message before the screen dimmed. "Pediatric trauma team assembling. Estimated arrival 8 minutes. Need Nurse Brooks." His throat tightened. He looked toward Grant, then toward Naomi, and for the first time that night, choosing silence felt less like loyalty and more like a mistake. Naomi stood where Grant had pointed, between the rear of her Toyota and the front of the patrol car, with the wet pavement shining beneath her shoes and the blue lights moving over her face in cold waves. She kept her hands visible at her sides, not because she had done anything wrong, but because she knew the smallest movement could be turned into a story she did not write. The woman under the bus stop awning was still recording. A second car had slowed on the opposite shoulder, its headlights washing across the scene before moving on. Route 17 smelled of rain, gasoline, and damp pine from the trees beyond the guardrail. Inside Naomi's car, her phone lit up again, but she forced herself not to reach for it. Grant opened the passenger door and looked at the trauma kit as though it might answer his suspicions if he stared hard enough. The bag was red, marked with a white Mercy General patch, its zippers labeled in Naomi's careful handwriting. Airway. Bleeding control. Pediatric. She had packed it that afternoon at the church clinic after a 6-year-old girl asked whether the little oxygen mask was for dolls. Naomi had smiled and told her it was for helping children breathe when the world got too scary. Now that same kit was being treated like evidence of something dark. "Officer Grant," Naomi said, keeping her voice even, "I am asking again that you verify my hospital identification before opening sterile medical supplies." Grant did not turn around. "You keep saying sterile like that changes anything." "It changes everything if those supplies are needed for injured children." Pierce stood beside the patrol car, watching Grant's hand hover over the zipper. His training told him this stop had already drifted beyond its reason. His conscience told him something worse: Naomi was telling the truth, and they were burning minutes they could not replace. Grant unzipped the front pocket and pulled out her hospital identification. The plastic card caught the patrol lights. Naomi Brooks. Registered nurse. Trauma lead. Mercy General Hospital. He looked at it, then at her, and for 1 second there was a chance for the night to correct itself. Naomi saw that chance. Pierce saw it too. But Grant slipped the card into his hand instead of handing it back. "This does not explain why you were driving fast." Naomi blinked once. "I was driving 42 miles per hour in a 45-mile-per-hour zone. Your partner already ran my plate. My license is clear. My badge is real. My hospital is calling. What more do you need?" Grant stepped away from the open car door, his expression tightening in the glow of passing headlights. "I need you to stop acting like you are in charge of this stop." Naomi felt the words hit the old place, the place worn smooth by years of being told that knowledge sounded like attitude when it came from her mouth. In the emergency room, her confidence saved lives. On this shoulder, the same confidence was being treated like disrespect. She turned her head slightly toward the dashboard camera clipped inside her windshield. Its small red light blinked, steady and patient. "For the record," she said clearly, "I am not refusing to cooperate. I am asking for the lawful reason I am being detained after my license, registration, and hospital identification have been verified." Grant's eyes flicked toward the camera. "You think that is going to help you?" "I think truth helps. Everybody eventually." The sentence was quiet, but it carried. The woman at the bus stop lowered her phone just enough for her face to show. Pierce looked down at the wet road, then back up, his jaw working like he was chewing on a decision. Grant took one step closer to Naomi, not touching her, but close enough to crowd the air between them. "You are making a mistake." Naomi met his eyes. She could hear sirens far away now, closer than before, weaving through the dark toward Mercy General. "No, officer," she said. "The mistake is believing my comm means I am powerless." The police radio cracked before Grant could answer. Static broke across the night, followed by dispatch naming Route 17, a school bus collision, multiple pediatric patients, and emergency transport to Mercy General. Pierce turned sharply toward the patrol car speaker. Naomi closed her eyes for half a breath. Grant stayed still, but the first shadow of uncertainty moved across his face. The truth was no longer only coming from Naomi. It was coming through the radio, through the phone, through the badge in his hand, through every piece of evidence he had chosen not to honor. The radio message did not end quickly. It kept unfolding in short, broken pieces through static and rain, each word making the shoulder of Route 17 feel smaller. School bus collision near mile marker 23. Multiple units responding. Pediatric patients being transported to Mercy General. Trauma team requested on arrival. Naomi stood very still, listening with the stillness of someone who had heard bad news arrive through machines before. Her eyes moved to her phone inside the car as it buzzed again against the console, bright and urgent. Grant held her hospital badge in one hand, but his fingers had tightened around the plastic until the edges pressed into his skin. For the first time that night, his certainty seemed to hesitate. Then his pride stepped in front of it. "Dispatch is handling that," he said. Naomi looked at him slowly. "Dispatch is sending them to my hospital. You are not the only nurse in Atlanta." "No," she said. "But I am the trauma lead they are asking for." Pierce took one step toward the Toyota. "Sir," the message on her phone matches the call. "Mercy General is requesting Nurse Brooks specifically." Grant shot him a look. "Stay out of it." Pierce stopped, but he did not look away this time. The rain had faded to a mist, thin enough to reveal headlights gathering in both directions. People were slowing down now, not enough to block traffic, but enough to watch. A man in a delivery van leaned forward over his steering wheel. The woman at the bus stop had both hands around her phone, recording with a face that no longer looked curious. It looked worried. Naomi felt every second leaving her like blood from a wound no one could see. She imagined the ambulance bay at Mercy General, the sliding doors opening, children crying, parents calling names, residents looking for direction, the charge nurse checking the clock and asking where Naomi was. Her chest tightened, but not from fear for herself. From helplessness. That was the one thing she had never learned to accept. Grant moved toward the open passenger door again and lifted the trauma kit slightly, examining the contents without understanding what he was looking at. Rolls of gauze. Sealed gloves. Pediatric wraps. A compact airway mask. A small laminated triage card. "This is a lot of equipment for somebody off duty," he said. Naomi stared at him. "It is a lot of equipment for somebody who spends her free time making sure poor neighborhoods get basic medical help." His face hardened at the answer. "Do not turn this into something else. You did that before I opened my mouth." The words came out softer than anger, but sharper than pleading. Pierce's eyes flicked to Grant's body camera. The small light was on. It had been on the whole time. Grant seemed to remember that at the same moment. He adjusted his stance, speaking louder now, more official. "You were stopped because your vehicle resembled one connected to a suspicious activity report." Naomi turned toward him fully. "My car is gray." The report was for a black sedan with temporary tags. "My tags are registered. My license is valid. My badge is real." Your partner confirmed all of that. The silence afterward was heavy in public. Grant looked at Pierce. Pierce did not deny it. Naomi continued, her voice controlled but carrying across the wet pavement. "You have checked everything except the assumption you made when you saw me." A passing ambulance wailed in the distance, heading toward the hospital without her. The sound cut through Naomi more deeply than anything Grant had said. Her eyes glistened, but she did not cry. She had no room for tears. Not here. Not while children were being carried into the one place where she knew how to help. Her phone lit again. Pierce read the message through the window before it dimmed. "First pediatric unit arriving in 6 minutes. Need trauma lead at Bay 2. Pierce exhaled and finally stepped forward. "Officer Grant, we need to release her and escort her to Mercy General." Grant turned on him. "That is not your call." "Then make it yours," Pierce said, his voice quiet but firm. The words surprised even him. Grant's eyes narrowed, and the old chain of command stretched between them, thin and dangerous. Naomi watched Pierce fight with himself, the younger officer's face pale in the red and blue wash of the lights. This was the moment the night asked him who he wanted to become. Grant pointed toward the patrol car. "Get back." Pierce did not move. Naomi took one breath, then another, counting time like a nurse counts pulse beats. "Officer Grant," she said, "if you keep me here and those children arrive without the trauma lead they called for, this will not stay on the side of the road." Grant leaned closer, his voice low. "Are you threatening me?" Naomi met his eyes. "No. I am telling you that consequences do not care how much authority you thought you had." The radio crackled again before he could answer. This time dispatch read names from the preliminary patient list for family notification coordination. The first two were unfamiliar. The third made Pierce's head snap toward Grant. Lily Grant, age 12. Possible transport to Mercy General. Grant's face emptied. The badge in his hand lowered a few inches. Naomi saw the change but did not understand it yet. Pierce did. His voice was barely audible over the rain. "Tyler," he said, "forgetting rank, forgetting protocol. Forgetting the recording devices around them. That is your daughter." For one moment, Route 17 lost all sound. The rain seemed to stop in midair. The patrol lights kept flashing, red then blue, but their colors no longer looked like authority. They looked like alarm. Officer Tyler Grant stared at Pierce as if the name had been spoken in another language. "Say that again." Pierce's face had gone pale beneath the shine of rain on his cheeks. Lily Grant. Age 12. Possible transport to Mercy General. Grant turned toward the patrol car radio, then toward Naomi's phone glowing inside her car, then back toward the dark road where sirens were gathering like a storm. His daughter had left for a school field trip that morning in a yellow bus with a purple backpack, 2 braids, and a note in her lunchbox he had written before leaving for shift. "Proud of you, kiddo. See you tonight." The memory hit him so hard his shoulders dropped. Naomi saw the change in him then, the sudden collapse of the officer into the father. She had seen that expression in emergency rooms hundreds of times, on people who had been certain the world was ordinary until one name turned it fragile. Grant stepped toward her, voice rough and urgent. "You need to get to the hospital." Naomi looked at him in silence. Less than 1 minute earlier, he had treated her urgency like a lie. Now that urgency had his child's name attached to it, it had become real to him. That was the cruelty of the moment, and everyone standing in the wet light could feel it. Pierce moved quickly to the open passenger door and pulled Naomi's hospital badge from Grant's hand. He held it out to her with both respect and apology in his eyes. "Nurse Brooks, we can escort you." Naomi took the badge and clipped it back to her jacket. Her fingers were steady, but her voice was not soft. "Now you believe me because the emergency has your daughter's name on it." Grant looked as if he had no defense left. His mouth opened, then closed. The woman at the bus stop kept recording, but even she lowered the phone slightly, caught between witnessing accountability and watching a father unravel. Naomi stepped to her car and reached for her trauma kit. Grant moved as though to help, then stopped himself. He no longer knew what he had the right to touch. The road hummed with passing traffic. The wet trees beyond the guardrail trembled in the wind. Pierce spoke into his radio, requesting immediate escort to Mercy General and notifying dispatch that Nurse Naomi Brooks was being released to respond. His voice shook on the first word, then steadied on the second. Grant stared at the body camera on his own chest. The small light still blinked. It had recorded the license check. The badge. The hospital calls. The messages. The moment Pierce said the car did not match. The moment Grant chose to continue anyway. The power had shifted, not because Naomi shouted, not because the crowd grew louder, but because the facts had been patient enough to survive him. Naomi slid into the driver's seat and placed the trauma kit beside her. Before she closed the door, Grant stepped closer, keeping his hands visible now, as if he had finally understood what that kind of caution felt like. "Please," he said, and the word was stripped of rank, command, and pride. "Please help my daughter." Naomi looked at him through the open door. In the red and blue light, her face was tired, rain-specked, and wounded in a way no report would fully capture. But beneath that hurt was something stronger than anger. Duty. "I was trying to help children before I knew one of them was yours," she said. Pierce lowered his eyes. Grant looked away first. Naomi started the engine. The dashboard clock read 7:41 p.m. 23 minutes gone. 23 minutes that could not be returned. Pierce pulled the patrol car ahead, lights on, clearing the lane for her. Grant sat in the passenger seat of the cruiser this time, silent, small inside the uniform that had felt so large on the roadside. As Naomi followed the flashing lights toward Mercy General, her phone rang again. She answered through the car speakers. "This is Nurse Brooks. I am 5 minutes out." A strained voice from the emergency department replied, "Naomi, we need you at Bay 2. Pediatric arrivals are coming in now." Naomi pressed her foot gently on the gas, eyes fixed on the wet road ahead. "I am coming," she said. And behind her, on the shoulder of Route 17, the rain washed over the place where power had mistaken itself for truth and lost. The escort to Mercy General felt longer than 5 minutes. Naomi followed the patrol car through wet intersections and green lights held open by dispatch, her hands steady on the wheel, her trauma kit secure beside her, her badge clipped back where it had always belonged. The city blurred around her in streaks of yellow storefronts, dark trees, and rain-slick pavement, but her mind had already left the road and entered the emergency department. Bay 2. Pediatric arrivals. Airway first. Bleeding control. Parents separated from children. Names spoken too fast. Fear everywhere. She forced herself to breathe the way she taught new nurses to breathe when the room became louder than their training. In for 4. Hold for 2. Move with purpose. The patrol car ahead turned hard into the ambulance entrance, and Naomi followed, tires whispering over the wet concrete. The bay doors were already open. Nurses in blue and gray scrubs moved beneath harsh white lights. A paramedic waved her in before she had even parked. Naomi, someone called, and the sound of her name inside that chaos did what Grant had refused to do on the roadside. It recognized her. She stepped out with the trauma kit in one hand and was immediately surrounded by motion. A charge nurse pressed a tablet toward her. 4 pediatric patients already here, 2 more inbound. Bay 2 is unstable but responsive. Bay 3 needs reassessment. We have 1 parent asking for a Lily Grant. Naomi's eyes moved once toward the patrol car. Grant had stepped out on the passenger side, but he did not approach. He stood outside the ambulance bay like the building itself had turned into a border he had no authority to cross. Pierce stood beside him, speaking into his radio, his posture different now, straighter, as if telling the truth had put weight in his spine instead of fear. Naomi turned back to the hospital. Put Lily in Bay 2. Get respiratory on standby. I need pediatric vitals, mechanism of injury, and time from scene. Her voice did not shake. Not because she had forgotten what happened, but because children did not have time for her pain. Inside Bay 2, a 12-year-old girl lay beneath a silver warming blanket, eyes half open, cheeks pale, purple backpack cut open and placed in a clear bag nearby. Lily Grant. Naomi knew before anyone said it. The girl had her father's eyes, but softer, frightened without the armor. Naomi stepped beside her and lowered her voice. Hi, Lily. I am Nurse Brooks. You are at Mercy General. You are safe here. Lily blinked slowly. My dad. Naomi placed 2 fingers gently on the girl's wrist, counting. He is here. Right now, I need you to listen to my voice. Around her, the trauma team moved with the rhythm Naomi created. One nurse adjusted oxygen. Another checked the monitor leads. A resident began speaking too quickly, and Naomi lifted one hand. Slow down. We do not chase panic. We follow the patient. The room settled by half a degree. Outside the glass, Grant watched through the doorway, his face stripped bare. He saw Naomi lean over his daughter with the same calm he had mistaken for defiance. He saw doctors listen when she spoke. He saw her read numbers, ask questions, notice small changes, and guide the room without raising her voice. Power had not shifted to her because of a badge, a weapon, or a command. It had shifted because she knew how to save a life, and everyone in that room knew it. Captain Rebecca Hayes arrived 20 minutes later, rain still shining on the shoulders of her coat. Pierce met her near the ambulance entrance and handed over his preliminary notes before she asked twice. He told her the plate had not matched. He told her the badge had been verified. He told her Grant had continued the detention after the emergency messages appeared. His voice was quiet but clear. Hayes looked through the glass at Naomi working over Lily, then at Grant standing alone against the wall. Your body camera is to remain untouched, she said. Grant nodded once. He did not argue. Maybe because his daughter was inside. Maybe because the truth had finally become heavier than his pride. In Bay 2, Lily's monitor steadied. Naomi exhaled slowly, then glanced toward the doorway where Grant stood with both hands pressed together, not praying exactly, but close. Their eyes met through the glass. He looked like he wanted to say something, but Naomi turned back to Lily first. Accountability could wait. Breathing could not. The next 30 minutes inside Mercy General moved like a storm with a heartbeat. Naomi went from Bay 2 to Bay 3, then back again, her shoes squeaking against the polished floor, her voice calm enough to pull order from fear. Lily Grant's breathing steadied under oxygen. Another child with a broken wrist stopped crying when Naomi wrapped a warm blanket around his shoulders and told him his dinosaur shirt was the bravest thing in the room. A little girl with glass in her curls kept asking for her teacher, and Naomi stayed beside her until a social worker found the woman 2 bays over. No one in the emergency department asked what had happened on Route 17. They could see it in Naomi's wet jacket, in the faint tremor she had when she washed her hands, in the way Officer Grant stood outside the glass like a man waiting for judgment from a room he could not command. Captain Rebecca Hayes stood near the nurse's station with Officer Pierce and an internal affairs investigator, reviewing the body camera upload on a secure tablet. The footage did not need explanation. It showed Naomi's hands on the wheel. It showed her license cleared. It showed her hospital identification verified. It showed the emergency messages lighting her phone again and again. It showed Pierce saying the car did not match the report. And it showed Grant choosing suspicion after the facts had already offered him a way out. Hayes lowered the tablet, her face hard but not cruel. "Officer Grant," she said, "you are relieved of field duty effective immediately pending investigation." Grant looked through the glass at Lily, who was awake now, holding Naomi's gloved hand while a doctor checked her chart. His voice came out low. "Captain, my daughter is in there." Hayes did not soften. "And the nurse caring for her is the woman you delayed." Pierce looked down. The sentence landed with the weight of a door closing. Grant removed his radio slowly and placed it on the counter. Then his badge. Then the keys to the patrol car. Each small sound seemed too loud against the hospital noise. Naomi stepped out of Bay 2 a few minutes later, pulling off her gloves and dropping them into the bin. Her face was tired, her eyes shadowed, but Lily was stable. Grant turned toward her with both hands empty now, no radio, no keys, no authority to hide behind. "Nurse Brooks," he said, and stopped. The title came late, but not unnoticed. Naomi waited. He swallowed. "I am sorry. For the stop. For not listening. For all of it." Naomi looked at him for a long moment. Behind him, Pierce stood silent, Captain Hayes watching from a few feet away. Through the glass, Lily looked small beneath the blanket, alive because a team had been ready and because Naomi had arrived before the window closed. "Your apology matters," Naomi said finally. "But only after accountability." Grant nodded, eyes wet but controlled. "I understand." "No," Naomi said gently. "You are beginning to." The words did not humiliate him. They told the truth. That was harder. Pierce stepped forward then, holding Naomi's dashboard camera and phone, both sealed in evidence bags with her permission. "The witness video is already online," he said quietly. "But the full footage will show everything." Naomi took one breath. She had never wanted to become a headline. She wanted to do her job, go home, heat up leftover soup, and call the pastor's wife to ask whether the blood pressure cuffs made it back to the church closet. But some stories grew beyond the people inside them because silence had protected the wrong things for too long. Captain Hayes turned to Pierce. "Your statement will be formal by morning." Pierce nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Grant looked at him, not with anger this time, but with the stunned recognition of a man realizing that loyalty to truth may cost someone less than loyalty to fear. Inside Bay 2, Lily stirred and called softly, "Dad." Grant's face changed. Naomi stepped aside, allowing him to see his daughter, but she did not move away completely. She remained close enough to help if the monitor changed, close enough to be needed, close enough to remind him that the person he had misjudged had never stopped choosing life. As Grant entered the room, Lily reached for him with her free hand while her other still held the corner of the blanket Naomi had tucked around her. Grant bent near the bed, careful, quiet, humbled. Naomi watched for only a second before turning toward the next bay, where another child was asking for water. Justice had begun outside the glass, but mercy still had work to do inside. A few weeks later, the rain on Route 17 had dried into memory, but the truth from that night did not disappear. The witness video spread first, then the full body camera footage, then the hospital timeline showing exactly how many minutes Naomi Brooks had been kept from Mercy General while children from the school bus crash were arriving. The investigation did what truth often does when people stop interrupting it. It connected facts. It named failures. It forced a department that had grown too comfortable defending procedure to admit that procedure without judgment could still become harm. Captain Rebecca Hayes announced new traffic stop protocols requiring clear documentation, faster supervisory review, medical emergency verification, and mandatory bias training led with community oversight. Officer Daniel Pierce gave his full statement, not polished, not heroic, just honest. He said he saw the mistake before he challenged it, and that the delay between seeing and speaking would stay with him. Officer Tyler Grant lost his patrol assignment and entered a long disciplinary review. He did not appear on television. He did not ask the public to feel sorry for him. For once, he sat with the silence his own choices had created. Lily recovered steadily. She left Mercy General 14 days after the crash with a purple cast, a stack of handmade cards from classmates, and a small stuffed bear Naomi had found in the pediatric supply closet. On the morning Lily was discharged, Grant stood beside the elevator in plain clothes, looking smaller without the uniform. Naomi walked past carrying a chart, and Lily called her name. "Nurse Brooks." Naomi turned. The girl held up the bear. "Thank you for coming." The hallway softened around those words. Naomi looked from the child to the father. Grant's eyes lowered, not from fear this time, but from respect. "She came even after I delayed her," he said quietly. Naomi studied him for a moment. "I came because she needed help." Grant nodded. "I know. Make sure you remember that before you decide who someone is." He did not answer quickly. Maybe the old version of him would have defended himself. Maybe he would have explained pressure, training, instinct, fear. But that morning, he only said, "I will." Months later, Naomi returned to her night shifts the way she always had. She tied her shoes before each shift, clipped her badge to her jacket, checked the trauma cards, and learned the names of new patients before they became room numbers. People recognized her now. Some thanked her in grocery store aisles. Some sent letters to Mercy General. One church painted a mural of a nurse standing under red and blue lights with her hands open, not surrendering, but standing firm. Naomi appreciated the kindness, but fame never fit her comfortably. What mattered more was quieter, a young officer waiting an extra breath before making assumptions, a dispatcher verifying an emergency call faster, a driver leaving a traffic stop alive in their dignity as well as their body, a child walking out of a hospital because the right people finally moved in time. On a clear Friday evening, Naomi passed the ambulance bay and saw Lily outside with her father. The girl was laughing, her cast gone, her purple backpack hanging from one shoulder. Grant saw Naomi and did not wave at first. He simply placed one hand over his heart, a small gesture with no demand attached to it. Naomi gave a slight nod. Not forgiveness wrapped in a bow. Not forgetting. Just a recognition that accountability had opened a door, and what he did with that door would decide the man he became. Naomi stepped back inside as the emergency department doors slid open for another call. The lights were bright. The floor smelled faintly of antiseptic. Somewhere, a monitor began to beep faster. She washed her hands, took one slow breath, and moved toward the sound. That was the lesson she left behind. Kindness is not weakness, and calm is not consent. Sometimes the strongest person in the room is the one who refuses to let cruelty decide who deserves help. So when power misjudges someone standing right in front of it, what should matter most, the uniform, the assumption, or the truth?